believe that leadership isn't a position or a role, it's an action and a choice. I believe that leadership can be learned. I believe that great leaders emerge from adversity. I believe that Happy Valley is full of great leaders. These are their stories. Welcome to the Penn State Leaders Podcast. Today we've got with us David Snyder, the Assistant Vice President for Auxiliary and Business Services. Welcome, David. We're glad to have you.
Thank you, Dave. Good to be here.
So we'll jump right into the questions. First, tell us a little bit about your role at Penn State and how you came to Penn State.
Okay. Well, as you said, I'm the Assistant Vice President for Auxiliary and Business Services. I've been in this role just since January 15th of this year. In my role, I oversee many of the support units for Auxiliary and Business Services, such as accounting and business operations, information technology, marketing, safety, Lion Surplus, and general stores. So many of those different units that support our housing and foods and Bryce Jordan Center, the airport, our hotel, transportation, many of those units, my units all provide that support for them. So how I got here at Penn State, I've been a lifelong Penn State person, I guess, whether it's academically or working here. So in September, I will finish my 25th year at Penn State. I began right out of high school. I started working part-time in the summers, cleaning dorm rooms in Pollock, and kind of just did that all throughout college, my first time through. And I ended up getting my degree in criminology, which I really never used. I'm not quite sure why I pursued that. I guess when I originally started, that was something I was interested in. But as I went through college, I really wanted to do something in business. But after I got my first degree, I continued to work at Penn State part-time in wage payroll. And with the intention, I wanted to go back to school for business. And my father worked here, so I used his discount my first time through, and I thought, well, I'll just use it again. And then I found out, no, you can't do that once you have one bachelor's degree. But so it came to me like, well, I'm working here wage payroll. Why don't I just try to get on full time and use my own discount? And it was the start of my 25 years here full time, where I luckily got on as a grade 10 in technical service at East Halls, cleaning restrooms and hallways and in Sproul Hall. And I did that for 1 year to the day when I started, and then left there and went to OPP working third shift in janitorial as a grade 9. And I did that for about a year and a half. But it was at that point where I was working third shift that I started back to college. And I started a business degree in economics. And it took me about 6 years to get through that part-time degree. But after that year and a half in OPP, I was able to get my first management job in housing. And so I worked in housing in various roles as I continued to go to school, eventually graduating with my second bachelor's and immediately starting my MBA here at Penn State. And probably within the first year there, an opportunity opened up in accounting in Auxiliary and Business Services that I had zero experience in accounting, but they took a chance on me and I ended up getting that job and moved on a couple more jobs after that with the Bryce Jordan Center as the director of finance there, and also then eventually moving on to or adding hospitality services as the director of finance also there, and then ultimately the position that I'm in now. So as I've pretty much gone to school almost the entire time that I've been working. So for other than a little stretch. So right now I have one more year in a second master's in strategic management and executive leadership. through the SMEAL. But then right after that, I'm working on concurrent master's degrees right now. That one should finish in a year, and then one more year, I will have another master's in corporate innovation, which focuses a lot on strategy. So I've spent a lot of time in many jobs at Penn State, but also a lot of time in school, which really drives me. I'm someone that wants to learn something new every single day. And I love that challenge, whether it's through academically or professionally.
Wow, what a great story, and such a unique one too, and it's such an American story of working your way up, right, from within the structure of Penn State, starting as cleaning dormitory rooms and then increasing your education and moving up to be an assistant vice president. So that's fantastic. As you think back on that time, what person or people have influenced you the most to become the leader that you are today?
I think probably I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my parents first and foremost. My father worked at Penn State 35 years, and he worked in fleet operations and drove a bus like the Loop bus for many years, and then became their group leader. But he instilled in me the sense of hard work and along with my mother, who at 80, almost 81 next week, still works like one day a week or so, because she just loves working so much. And both of them have worked so hard throughout their lives and instilled that sense of hard work in me, and also taught me what was right and wrong. And I think that is so important in being a leader, being that ethical person, always knowing, and that your team knows that you're always going to do what's right. So my parents had a major influence on me, and they can, even though my father has been gone for a number of years, but they still have a major influence on me. But also maybe more professionally, what I've tried to do is take something from, I've had many supervisors over the course of my career here, and everyone, as we know, not everyone is the perfect supervisor, perfect leader, but everybody has their strengths and weaknesses. And what I've tried to do is, what I thought was a strength of someone that I would like to emulate, whether it's their leadership or how they manage, how they their work ethic. That's been very important to me. All throughout, maybe one person that I would really would call out would be my past supervisor before this position. She has been she was the one that took a chance on me being an accountant without any accounting experience. And she has been my supervisor for 16 straight years prior to me leaving there. And so I got to know her very well, and her leadership qualities, and how she managed her team, how she led her team. And she's very ethical and always wanted to do what's right, and tried to lead us down towards that same common goal. So that was very important. And lastly, my current supervisor, who's the associate VP here, even though it's only been 6 months, he's shown me a lot about how to become a better leader. Maybe a lot. I think people thought that he was mostly numbers driven, but he's by far, he does like his numbers, but he's very people driven. And he's helped me just in this short time become a better leader with how to engage with our employees through roundings, what he calls roundings. He comes from a medical background. He's instilled that in all of us, and that's something that I've enjoyed more than anything in my new role. So.
Yeah, I'm familiar with this idea of rounding, and it's really impressive.
It is.
And there's nothing that replaces that ability to talk to people and understanding what they're experiencing at a work level. And maybe you, with your background of having worked at lower levels of the organization and moved up, you maybe more than anyone can understand the value of that, of a leader hearing directly from those people and then giving them the opportunity to have some influence also has got to be pretty motivating for people.
Yeah, I think you're so right. It's as I've told John, my supervisor, how rewarding it is talking to all of the team. I've tried to do about 2 to 3 different roundings per week, and I've done that since March. And just rounding, I believe that I have about 160 team members, other than my direct reports. So my plan is to round with every single one, and then as soon as I get to the end, you start back over. And it's very enjoyable to me to talk to them, even though they're mostly on Zoom right now. I have done a few in person, so I'm really looking forward to the in-person roundings. And it really is like, for me, they're informal, but they're just talking to, we have a set questionnaire that we kind of start with, but sometimes, they may go down a different route, and it's good just to hear about what everyone is doing. Like, I talked to somebody who likes to bake. He's won contests at the farm show, and we talked, I bet, 20 minutes on him baking different things and winning these contests. I can't boil water, but so that, that's not something that typically I would be interested in, but it was very interesting talking to him and seeing his passion in that. So it was, I really enjoyed those.
That's great. Can you think back in your career of a time of adversity and talk a little bit about how that influenced you to become the leader that you are today?
Let's see. I think thinking back, maybe it was more adversity and me being at a crossroads of what did I want to do with my career. I know as I said, I started as a grade 10, and I remember the very first day to this, I know what I wore that day, almost 25 years ago, but going and the first thing, I worked in Sproul Hall. It's 9 floors, and both elevators were broken from the football weekend. And so I had to climb up the stairwells and just start cleaning the bathrooms. I was not really given any sort of training or anything. They just said, go up there and start cleaning. So I did what I thought I was supposed to do. But I bet I only made it about 40 minutes, I think, there, and knew, like, this is not what I want to do the rest of my life. So what do I need to do to move from that to do what I want to do? I didn't really know what I wanted to do other than maybe this bigger goal of working in business. And that's what I used to tell myself, I want to work in business, but what does that really mean? Back then, I really didn't know. I just knew it wasn't what I was doing then. However, I knew I couldn't just magically move into business. So it took a lot of just me thinking, what do I need to do to get to where I think I want to be? And that meant, going to OPP and working third shift so I could take classes during the day in economics. So that was hard to do. Of course, I was much younger then, and it was easier, but it was a lot of that. I needed that dedication to know that there was something down the road for me that I still didn't know what it was back then. And after finishing that degree, I still didn't bid on any sort of business type of jobs or anything like that. I started my MBA right away after graduating there. And then it wasn't until that point did I know that I wanted how to get into some sort of accounting or business type of thing. And even though my first accounting job, I thought, well, this isn't going to be that interesting. It's debits and credits all day. or at least that's what I thought. And it was far from that. So it was, I guess with adversity was more like not knowing what the end goal was, but I knew it wasn't what I was doing at that moment, but I knew there was a lot of steps that I needed to do. Had to be patient and do things in order, or what I thought was in order to get to where I wanted to be. So it was a lot of work, and of course nothing is ever given to you. So it's a lot of work, a lot of dedication, a lot of giving up a lot of other things for what I wanted, I guess. And it was much later in my career that I really knew where I wanted to be. And actually it was this position, and it's taken me, I mean, I knew I wanted this position probably 10 years ago, but I didn't think it was going to work out the way it did, or as soon as it would, but luckily it did.
I think it's incredible perseverance that you've shown, right? And just having this vision of where you want to be and just continuing to work hard to get there, not knowing exactly what the path is. Mm-hmm. How is that experience, how has that influenced how you lead people today, now that you have achieved this role? Mm-hmm. and you are leading a large organization? How does that influence your leadership?
I think partly for me, it's not like what I did was something that I really wanted to do, but that's not necessarily what everyone wants to do. So I encourage my staff to really, push forward, to do what they find, what motivates them, set these goals of whether they're 15-year down the road goals or just goals for that week. It doesn't have to be, what I did doesn't just fit with just anybody. And because everyone's situations are different. But I think overall, like I've always had a goal, whether it's long-term, I have short-term goals, even for the week. So I've really tried to work with my team and get them to, one, understand what motivates them. I think that's so important, because it may not be X position down the road. It may just be they're happy doing exactly what they're doing. How do we make their job more enjoyable? And on an everyday, how do we make the work environment more enjoyable, more welcoming, that everyone wants to come to work, everyone likes what they do, and that they're motivated to do what's the very best for them and for our organization.
That's great. So David, you obviously spent a lot of time in education. You're continuing in an education program, I guess have been your whole career. When you think specifically about leadership, are there any things that you study for continuing to cultivate kind of your leadership abilities? Books that you would recommend, authors, podcasts, any activities that you do to keep up your leadership skills?
Yes. As I said, like right now I'm a year and a half into my master's degree in strategic management there. So there's a lot of that, of course, focused on leadership and different management styles. So that's all we read, and everything's built around that leadership and management at that executive level. However, what I haven't, I hate to even say this, but other than what I read is mostly textbooks, just because it's been so long. However, John, my supervisor, when I came into this role, gave me this book called The Truth About Employee Engagement by Patrick Lenzione. Mm-hmm. And that book, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it or not, but it's written as a fable, but it talks about how to engage employees. And this book, it was, I think it's about 240, 250 pages, a very, very quick read. It was something that I really couldn't put down, because it just showed and talked about how to keep employees engaged through this fable of a diner out in the Midwest. And it really helped to show that there was it got to what the author thought was the three root causes of when employees feel like they're miserable in their job, and like that everyone wants to be known and understood and rewarded. People want to feel relevant in what they do, that their work is really important to not only to them, but to the organization, to their supervisor. So you need to really show how much and how important that the work that they do is to me, to the organization. And that's one thing that I've always really tried to talk to my staff about is, we all have kind of different duties, but we're all working towards the same goal, and we're all important in what we do for the organization. And the third is being able to measure what everyone is doing. What is success? What does that look like? How do you measure success? And it doesn't have to be bottom line driven. It could be, but it's also in the book, the author talked about a man that worked the drive-through window at this diner, and how he measured the customer service was how many smiles he got from his day. So even something as little as that was very important. So it doesn't have to be what are the dollars on the bottom line, but in this case, the man, all he had to do was just measure it, like tick off how many smiles he got that day, and try to better that as the days went on. So that was very empowering, that book, and I have it on my bookshelf here at the office, and it was a very interesting book, very helpful. And podcasts, I'm not one that's listened to many podcasts, but at all. But John also, part of my onboarding, I think maybe not specifically, but he gave me these podcasts called Manager Tools. That basically, it's a 3-part series on one-on-ones, how to conduct one-on-ones with your direct reports. And they're short, maybe 30 to 40 minutes. But the two in the podcast just talked about how to engage with your direct reports, how to get to know them better. And the two podcasters talked about having a structure that you should have one-on-ones at least a half hour every week with every one of your direct reports. And they cut it, basically section up that half hour, 10, 10, 10. The first 10 minutes are to give your direct report anything they want to talk about. They can talk about the weekend, they can talk about work, they could talk about their dog, their family, anything that they want to talk about. And then the next 10 minutes would be like my time to kind of talk about what work or whatever I wanted to talk about with them. And the last 10 minutes are about talking about you together, talking about the future. What do we need to do? But they also stress that, you can't be that just 10, 10, 10, and that's it. Like you don't, after the first 10 minutes, you don't turn the person off. And they were all like, maybe the first couple where the person talks the full 30 minutes and you don't get anything in, but you keep building that relationship between you and your employee, getting to know them, getting to know their families, their pets, things like that. So I've used that. I try to, in the back of my mind, the 10, 10, 10, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way. Maybe the next week it does. Maybe the next two after that don't. But it really builds that relationship, which is so important that you have between you and your team.
That's great. Thank you for some very specific recommendations. Do you have any web or social media presence if people want to learn more about you?
Well, the only thing I have, I'm not big on social media other than I have a LinkedIn account. Mm-hmm. So I really don't go on it too often or anything like that, but really I don't have Facebook or anything like that. So, but I do have my LinkedIn account. So, and it just really has kind of like my background, things like that. I'm not very big on posting anything at all. I don't think I ever have, but it's more for me. I like to every so often go on and just read what others are doing, kind of in a professional format rather than like the Facebook and things like that. I'm not really into that. So, but.
Okay, great. Well, David Snyder, thank you for your time today. And thank you for sharing your Penn State leadership story with us.
Oh, thank you, Dave.
So I think, one of the things that was really interesting for me as I listened to your story was your focus on education. I mean, you've been in, bachelor's, master's degree level education for your whole career. Talk a little bit about why that's so important to you.
Sure. Education has always been very important to me because it's an avenue for me to learn something new. As I was saying earlier, I'm someone that likes to learn something new every single day, whether it's academically or professionally or, just in the world. And I have, as I said, I have gone most of my adult life towards different degrees. And at one point in between, I started on some doctorate courses and actually finished a lot in higher ed. But it was kind of a struggle for me. It was, I didn't want to teach or anything like that. I thought it would be helpful in my career to have that. And I got a long ways towards my dissertation proposal, but then some family medical issues came about that I really had with my father and my brother. And so that kind of took time away. And, as I thought about it, it really wasn't, it was a struggle for me to do. So I, kind of looked and thought, what really interested me was the leadership. Like by that time, I think as I said, I've been in the current degree for about 1.5 years, and leadership is what really excites me and interests me. So I was able to move right into that, but it's been very, it's something that I do. I don't know if I would, in some ways it's kind of my hobby, which is strange, because it's definitely a lot of work, a lot of nights, a lot of weekends, and but in many ways it just drives me to just to continue, not towards any like, oh, I need this degree or this number of degrees or anything like that. It has nothing to do with that. For me, it's just learning something new. Like I watch, this might seem strange to some, but I watch a lot of YouTube on ancient Egypt and like I watch that all the time, or on the Civil War, things like that, different things that allow me to still learn and be engaged, but not having that, oh, I have to write a paper on it or I have to do this. So that's what I don't watch TV, that like there's no shows that I watch or anything like that. I'm more interested in learning different things like that. And watching, that's what I really drives me. So I think it's almost a learning, no matter whether it's at work or at Penn State here academically, or even at home, learning about ancient Egypt or the Civil War or Gettysburg, things like that. So it's something that really interests me a lot. And I don't know if I will, maybe I will never stop. Like I said, I started the current degree 1.5 years ago, but just probably maybe a month ago, SMEAL offered what they call stacking of degrees, that you could share some credits to get a second master's concurrently. And I already had all of my credits done that I could share anyway. So it was an easy thing, because I have been, even though I wasn't done with this degree, I still have 1 year. I was like, what's next? What's after that? And this was a great opportunity. It was something I'm very interested in, and it's another year. But so it's something that I really enjoy a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting you use the word hobby because
Yeah.
you have a sense that it's a passion and it it drives your energy, right?
Mhm.
Otherwise, I don't see how you do it to just
Yeah.
constantly, because it is so much work. It would be a grind if you were just
Yeah.
trying to, I need to achieve something, but it's
Yeah.
clear for you that it's the process and the
Mhm.
knowledge, not just kind of the terminal degree that you're trying to get to.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, that's great.
Mhm.
I'm really interested in, I think your story of perseverance and hard work. Again, as I said earlier, I love it as a great, Penn State and American story. I mean, of this working your way up.
Mhm.
Um, Anything else to share about that of what drives you? I mean, you talked about, the lessons you learned from your parents.
Mhm.
What is that something that you felt since you were a child, or is it something that, were there things in your life that happened to you that really reinforced that? Talk a little bit
Mhm.
about where that comes from, because it felt really, I think a lot of, leaders who have achieved where you have are hard workers, but again, I just think your story is really unique. And anything you can kind of share to dig into that a little bit?
Well, I think I go back to my parents and my upbringing, just knowing, like when I was my brother and I, who's a year younger than me, when I can remember when my father took a third shift job just so that he could stay home with us when we were young. So my mom worked. Both of them, neither one of them were able to go to college or anything back when they were, 18 or anything like that. So, and my mom loved education, even though she couldn't go herself. So, uh, but they instilled in me this sense of really hard work, what it meant to, to go to work. You don't just take work off. You don't miss work for any reason. We didn't really go on a lot of family vacations or anything, which was fine with me. Some of my friends did, but, I didn't miss that or anything like that. My parents were always working, but um, so that instilled in me that sense of that hard work. And uh, to this day, and I've only actually missed one sick day in 25 years now. So I have a lot of
Wow.
time. And my father always said, he didn't miss much time ever either, but he would always say, you never know when you might need these, so why, so many people just use them as soon as they get them. And to me, it's something that I really pride myself on, that I like coming to work. And I think that was instilled in me and from my parents. I mean, my parents built their own house. I mean, my dad's not a carpenter or anything like that. Him and my two grandfathers, who one was a mason, so he kind of helped out a lot. But they did everything at the house. They had to. It was how to save money and taught themselves how to do it. And my mother still lives in the same house that they built back in 1965 or whatever. So that kind of just growing up around that really helped me a lot to know that this is the way I wanted to be too, as a person, as somebody. I was going to give it 110% every day. That it's not, can never just phone it in on a day when you just feel, do I want to go? And there are those days, that's for sure, as everyone knows. And there's parts of everyone's job that aren't the most exciting, or what you may not really enjoy doing, but it's part of your job. And how do you stay motivated to get through that? So it really is, I would say the most is my upbringing, and seeing how my parents were and trying to emulate that. Um, that's very important, and I think very important to how I am, who I am, and how I got to where I am.
Yeah. I love that story. And I think I relate to that. My dad was similar in that, we didn't take a lot of vacations, financially things were
Yes.
pretty tough growing up. And
Mhm.
he would say, I've never been sick a day in my life.
Yeah.
And he just didn't didn't take vacation days, worked hard, and that model influenced me. And I think that was a generational thing too. My
I think so
parents,
too.
about the same age as yours, I
Mm-hmm.
think, and that was definitely part of that generation. And I know, my parents were born right around the time of the Depression, and so they were very influenced by how their parents had to live through the Depression, and you conserve things, you worked hard, and that was just part of the experience of being formed by that. And similar experience of, my parents didn't go to college. They were happy with high school degrees, and it was a rare thing in that generation. But they were really proud to see. I was actually the first of my family to graduate from college. And so, that was just thrilling for them to see.
Yes.
Yeah, some similar experiences there.
I would agree. I was the first for my family too. And it was more, I've never been one, like I didn't want to go to my graduation or anything like that. That's just not, it wasn't for me. But of course, I went because my mother, wanted me to go. And
Yes.
I did go for my my MBA. She wanted me to go there, and my father was still alive then when I got that. So it was more for them to, rather than me. I was just glad to be done and immediately moved on, on to whatever was next. But it was more, I think they were proud of that.
Yes.
That I was able to achieve that. So.
Yeah, I think it's Simon Sinek. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He's kind of a leadership speaker and writer, and he talks about graduations, and he talks about that they're not for the person graduating. They're to celebrate the people who helped them get there. And I think that's so true. Once you've experienced it and you go, oh yeah, I get it now. Right. That's what graduation is about. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I completely agree. Yes.
I'm curious because you've had this kind of unique, you had a bachelor's degree, wasn't really what you wanted to do. You knew you wanted to do something different, and you were willing to put in the work to change careers. If you had some advice for someone who is in a similar situation where they're not sure that either what they've got their degree in or how they've started working in is really the right thing for them, but they're scared about, there's fear there about shifting gears and what it's going to take and whether that's the right thing to do. And maybe they're making a little bit of money, and so there's not as much motivation. What kind of advice would you give to someone who's in that kind of situation?
I think thinking back on my own self, I would encourage them to explore, what that might look like if you're in a certain field and maybe you're thinking about changing. To me, I'm not a big risk taker or anything like that. So I would encourage them to, kind of dip their toe in and maybe take a class. See if maybe you're changing from, like I did, from criminology into accounting or something like that. Take a class, see if that interests you, rather than just from my own standpoint, because I'm not a big risk taker. Some people, I'm sure, just like, well, I'm quitting that job and I'm going to move, right, just take a chance and do that. For me, that's not in my personality. I'm not wired that way. I could never do that. That would be very scary. It wouldn't even been an option for me. But I kind of took my time and explored it. And even because, as I said, I knew I didn't want to do what I was doing in criminology, but I wanted to be more in business. And I could have just gone back and got my MBA. I could have just gone from the first degree and applied and started an MBA. For me, though, it goes back to me being this, not being taking so much chances. I thought, well, I can't just do that. I can't just go from criminology into an MBA. There was quite a few years, probably 6 or 8 years before I started it, but I knew I needed to prepare myself for that. So that was going into the economics, learning the basics. And that helped me determine, did I really enjoy what I was doing, where I'm going? And that helped a lot. So I would really encourage somebody to, if they are thinking about changing course or whatever is, for me, I would encourage them to, ease into it in some ways rather than be so just jump right in. However, everyone's different. So I know that's how I've done it, and that's how I would do all throughout my career. That I've been patient. Sometimes it's hard to be patient. I mean, sometimes I just wish, I wish I was done. I wish, with school, I wish I could be done right away. But I would encourage patience and taking your time, easing into trying to find that niche where you think you may want to go, because what it also helped me to navigate where I wanted to go by taking my time. Because if I would have just jumped right in, then it's almost you may have jumped to the wrong place. So it helped me slowly figure out my path in academically and in my career.
Yeah. I think that's great advice, especially for young people, to your point, who they're maybe not sure. And so is there a way to do that, kind of minimizing the risk that you're not headed to the right place if you're really not sure?
Yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense.
In my career too, there's been probably on 2 occasions where that it's not always a move up for me. So throughout my career, early in my career, I guess it was before I took that accounting job, I was in the old world at Penn State. You had different levels, like they went like a 20, a 21 or whatever, and up to, I forget what it was, but I happened to be a 21 at the time, I remember. And this was when I was offered the opportunity to go into accounting. And it also was a 21. So it wasn't going from taking any sort of increase in salary or anything like that. It was a lateral move. It was into something that I thought I wanted to do. So I moved that way laterally just to get to where I thought I wanted to be. So, and I was in that role for about 3 years at the same pay, everything. That's what I thought I needed to do. And then eventually there was another job opportunity that came up that even the associate vice president wanted me to bid on. And I thought about it, but it just wasn't the career path that I wanted to go. So it was hard for me to say no to her, but because but she completely understood, because I just knew, maybe, it would have meant more money. However, it wasn't where I really thought I wanted to be. Would that have helped me get to where I wanted to go? Probably not. So I was willing to, yes, this might be a great opportunity, maybe more money, but I still had, deep down, I thought this isn't what I want. So I had to say no to that.
That's great. That idea of kind of delayed gratification. Like I know where I want to be, and this isn't moving closer there. Might be a little more money, right? Might be what my boss, wants to see me do right now. That's great. And that's also great advice, right? Staying true to yourself and what your goals are.
Yes. Right.
I think that's great advice for a leader. So we're kind of coming towards the end here. You've been at Penn State for a long time. You had a father who worked many years at Penn State. So there's a long history of affiliation with Penn State in your family. Talk a little bit about what Penn State means to you, and why you think it's a special place that you want. Obviously, there was a discount to come to school, so there's financial incentives for you there. But you've chosen to continue to work at Penn State, to continue to get an education. So talk a little bit about what Penn State means to you.
Penn State means so much to me. It always has. From when I was young, I remember my father bringing us to football games. And when I remember even way back after Penn State won the 82 Sugar Bowl and everything, and football Saturdays were spent watching Penn State football growing up. And, my dad would bring us over to campus a lot when we were growing up. And so when it came time to apply for college, I only put in one application. I knew I wanted to come here, whereas, a lot of people, oh, I just want to get away. I want to get away. I didn't want to get away. I knew exactly where I wanted to go. So I knew I wanted to come here. I started out at the Altoona campus, which was just as close to my home as University Park, but my dad thought it might be easier going to a smaller branch campus because I come from a very small town. But so that was the start, I guess, way back when I was a kid, and started my, love for Penn State and how much I really enjoyed everything about Penn State, the people. It was probably probably 5 to 6 years into my career at Penn State before I really knew, oh, this is what I want to do. I want to stay at Penn State. It wasn't that I graduated from college and then thought, well, I'm going to stay at Penn State. I want to work here forever. I never thought that. I thought I might do something different, work elsewhere. But after so long and getting to know so many people, and I've only really been, other than my 1.5 years in OPP, I've been in auxiliary and business services the entire other 23 and a half years or whatever it's been. So I've really got to know a lot of great people, and I like the organization and what it means to be part of auxiliary and business services and Penn State. It's something that really motivates me and encourages me to do more. And that's something that I really pride myself on and really enjoy about Penn State.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, it's something that I've gotten an appreciation for. You talked a little bit about auxiliary and business services and how, as I moved into my role in finance and business, which I did for about 5 years, and understanding that finance and business is runs a small city at University Park and a bunch of small towns at the Commonwealth campuses, and auxiliary and business services really is kind of the economic engine of that, in addition to athletics of that city that runs. And it's been really fascinating for me to learn that. It's a part that as a student is kind of hidden from you. I mean, you're interacting with it, but you don't understand kind of the bigger infrastructure that is required. And so that's something that I think I've gotten an appreciation for. It's been really interesting. And something that occurred to me as you were talking about kind of your relationship with Penn State, and it's something that I've heard from people who have worked at other universities and come to Penn State, and they say, what's really different here is you're so loyal. Like everyone kind of loves their alma mater, or but there's something, it's deeper at Penn State. Yes. And it's interesting, and I don't know exactly what it is. I have some theories. Maybe I think the football program you mentioned and how that grew up and became kind of this binding spirit of the university, as well as that it was not just about winning, that there was a greater goal here. There was kind of a noble effort in addition to the entertainment aspects of it. I think that's part of it. I think how Penn State is somewhat isolated. So you come here, it's not in a big city. It's not like Ohio State in Columbus or University of Minnesota and in Minneapolis, that there's this greater influence around the university. The university is kind of it. And so you come here and everything you do revolves around the university. The downtown is a few blocks, the College and Beaver Avenue, and it's, maybe 10 blocks the other way. It's a small area. There's everything that happens here revolves around the university. And so it seems to me there's a variety of influences that make this place, when you come here and spend time here, either as an undergraduate or work here, that really kind of drives people together in relationship. And anyway, those are my thoughts. I'm curious what you think drives the loyalty to Penn State.
I think it's a lot in what you just said too. It is Penn State. The loyalty does seem unique just with talking to some of my colleagues here that might be from different, universities. It just, I don't know, it's just something, it's that loyalty that once you're part of Penn State, and this could just be me, but like once you're part of Penn State, it means so much to me to say that I have, am part of Penn State. I have a lot of pride in when someone asks, where do you work at? And I say, over at the university. I'm not one to ever say really what I do. I'm not into titles or anything like that. I almost find I cringe if they ask, like, what do you do or anything like that, because that's never mattered to me. It's more like I like being able to say that I work at Penn State or I've gone to school at Penn State. It's a sense of pride for me, and I think others are like that. They're very proud of whether they just went to college here or if they work here, and I think that's unique in some places that others. I have friends at home that just go from job to job to job, and there's no sense of loyalty. Maybe they're just chasing money with no true end goal other than just, well, I can go make so much more per hour if I go here or that. And there's absolutely like no sense of loyalty at all for that. And to me, I think you're missing out on so much. You don't develop those roots and those friendships. I mean, you may have friendships, I guess, with the people that you work with, but then after a year, you just leave and you may leave the company or whatever. And then you, in some ways, lose those. Here, I've been lucky enough to be in the same department for so long that I just keep building those relationships. I have all of the ones that, many people have retired since I started. I'm here on my floor here. There's only one other person that is still here that when I was on this floor many years ago is still left. Everybody's new. So, but I'm still, close to all of those people, and a lot have been my supervisors, and they may not live around here or anything like that. But it's that sense of loyalty and friendship that you build, the relationships you build over the course of time. And that's been very important and exciting and interesting to me.
Yeah. Well, it's fantastic. I think we're coming up on time here, so we'll wrap up. But again, Thank you for the conversation. And
thank you.
And it's really, I really enjoyed the learning about you and your role and everything you bring to your role, and your experiences and your leadership story. So thank you, David Snyder, for your leadership here at Penn State.
Oh, thank you, Dave.
Thank you for listening to the Happy Valley Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. Give us a review and share us with others. You can follow us on Twitter at HV Leader Podcast and on YouTube at Happy Valley Leaders Podcast. Remember, leadership is an action and a choice, so go be a leader.